Hey, it's the Magnificent One, creator of the independent comic book Kinetic. You can find me on Indiegogo if you want to back that campaign. Well, there was a lot of big news this week when it came to the comic book industry and entertainment itself. Probably the biggest one is The Last Ronin #2 dropped. That is the best comic on the market right now, in my opinion, and that was awesome. Then there was also the whole Gina Carano stuff. There was a major interview that dropped today, and I would recommend that you check that out if you have the chance to kind of see some of the behind the scenes going on of what happened. But probably one of the biggest things is there was talk about DC Comics being brought out by wealthy fans. Individuals who can not only read comics but can buy comics and own the publishing side of that company. So that got me to thinking, if I was a rich, wealthy DC fan and I had the opportunity to run a company, what would I do? And unfortunately, I don't have the millions, if not billions of dollars it takes to do that, but here's a couple of insights of what I would do. Probably not what everybody else would want to have done, but hey, if it was my company, I'd make it the way I want to make it. So a couple of things I would do differently is I would introduce or reintroduce the concept of ABC storytelling. So this was a big concept that Jim Shooter had, and Jim Shooter was the editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics. And one of the things he did was he had this idea that every single comic is probably somebody's first comic book. So you can't just have characters be in the middle of a story. You have to have some sort of relatable plotline going on so people can jump on. So nowadays what we do is we just restart, we just have a whole bunch of number ones so people have a jumping on point. What he used to do instead is he had this concept of ABC storytelling, which is simply this. You have an A story. The A story is a self-contained plot that if you read from the beginning of the book to the end of the book, it comes to a resolution. So the entire plotline is completely finished within that same issue. You also have a B story going on, which is essentially a story that runs over a course of 3, maybe 4 issues. So this is a story arc that individuals can get the whole arc if they just read a few pages of the comic. So if they come in to reading the book in the middle of a story arc, in 2 to 3 issues, they will be at the beginning of a new story arc, so they don't really miss out on that as well. And then lastly, you'd have the continuous storyline, the ongoing plot, the stuff that goes on for 10, 15, 20, even forever. The issues that don't come to be resolved for a long period of time. So that keeps the traditional fans, the ongoing fans, the people who've been there from the beginning, a reason to keep going on and keep reading. So the reason we do that is because what this does is it gives you a sense of completion because you've now read a book that allows you to have a complete story. You get to know the character because essentially what the writer has to do is summarize the essence of that character in some of those shorter stories, as well as creating a desire to see the plot lines of the ongoing stories get completed. So something I would like to see disciplined and brought back into comic book writing. The next thing I would do is stress the subdivision of the universe. So I'm going to use Marvel as an example because I was actually more of a Marvel fan than I was a DC fan. And what this means is essentially what we would be doing is dividing the universe into sub-universes. So we'd have a Spider-Man universe, a Fantastic Four universe, an X-Men universe, an Avengers universe, etc., etc. You could probably throw in like a space universe in there too if you wanted to kind of focus on like the Silver Surfer, Guardians of the Galaxy, Captain Marvel, that kind of stuff. But I would do this because it allows development within a continuity of a small universe. One of the challenges we have is now we're in a situation where one character has to make sure that they're aligned with all the other characters throughout the Marvel Universe. Otherwise, it kind of screws up the believability of that universe. So instead, I would want to have these smaller sub-universes. And I would also want to continue to do the events they do, but I would avoid company-wide crossovers like the Plague And what I mean by that is I would limit that to maybe every 3 to 5 years. Because the thing is, those crossovers are great for sales, but I do feel that what they do is they cripple continuity and storytelling. So the key is to have events on a scale that actually makes sense, which would be kind of these sub-universe crossovers. So individuals within the Fantastic Four universe would crossover into other individuals within that Fantastic Four universe. And then once in a while, you would do sub-universe crossovers. An example of that would be if The Thing shows up in the Avengers or Wolverine shows up in Spider-Man's universe. But it doesn't mean that the entire Marvel universe has to do some sort of event where they now have to stop storytelling for an entire month or several months if that's the case. So the other thing I would do is I would thin the line. Hey, we got too many titles. We got 60-something titles over there in Marvel. So DC is doing something similar to this. And I understand why, right? Because there's this concept of what we call marginal utility, which means if even $1 of profit is made from having another issue, you keep publishing it. Because at that point, every time that you are producing a comic book, you're gaining money from it. So that creates what we call the flood the shelf type of strategy, where Marvel just kind of pits off all kinds of books because they know that each one of them will bring in, even if it's just a few dollars, will bring in profit. So if I was going to run the company, I would actually change that. Probably would not make sense, to be honest with you, as far as current profit, because again, you would be losing money that's on the table by doing this. However, I think from a branding perspective and things outside of sales, I think they do impact future sales because there's too much stuff out there and it dilutes the brand. So I would, instead of having 60 titles a month, I would keep that down to 20, maybe 30 core titles. The benefits also to that is if you have less books, you can have less creators. And so then you can concentrate on keeping the best creators and paying them more money. So that would be awesome, because then you could spark a wave of new artists, new talented people who want to come in, instead of just coming in and paying people, $100 a page to draw for them. You could pay them $1,000 a page. And so I also think it would be good because then you'd have a core set of well-known, popular characters in the universe. Now, the next thing I would do is focus on team books. There's just too many solo series. The thing is, when it comes to solo series, there's only a handful of characters who can actually carry a storyline for a long time and carry a series for a long time. Over in the Marvel world, I could think of a few. I could think of Captain America, The Punisher, Spider-Man, Wolverine, the Hulk, Deadpool, Daredevil. And there's a lot of characters out there I would love to see personally in a solo book, like Gambit. Cable was awesome when he had his own solo series, but they just don't have the popularity. And I just don't see the point of having a Captain Marvel or a Ms. Marvel or Squirrel Girl or any of this stuff when I don't think they're actually being read by anybody. So let's get rid of them and instead focus on team books. Doesn't mean you get rid of those characters completely. Hey, you can have any one of these characters show up in an Avengers book or in an X-Men book or something where they're there for a little bit of a time. See, the thing is, it's way, way better to have the fan base have a desire for a character to have a solo book, but have them in a team, instead of having a solo book where there's not a lot of interest and you just keep pushing it, because it makes it kind of seem stupid when the company's going, this is a really popular character, and everybody's going, I don't really want to read that character, right? And there's other things you can do too. If you want to have a solo type book, well, what you can do, you have backup stories. You have small character arcs where you can star those individuals. But what I don't want to see is, have, Jubilee have her own solo series that runs for 20 issues just because somebody says, I really like this character. No. Let's get back to doing things the right way. Have a team book. Feature those individuals once in a while. Maybe even do something like Marvel Comics Presents, where instead of individual characters having one complete book, they have 5 or 6 pages in an issue each month, so they tell a smaller version of their story. And you know what? It forces writers to have better plot lines. So last thing I would do, and this is actually probably the dumbest thing I could come up with because if I did it, it would probably probably bankrupt any company I ran, and that would be to redefine the trade paperback. Listen, the thing is, trade paperbacks. I fell into this trap too. Is if there is a series I'm interested in, I just wait for the trade paperback to come out. So I stopped collecting individual issues because it used to be, individual issues was the way you read comic books. You would go to a comic book store and you would pick them up on Wednesday and you'd read and you'd wait for the next month. But now people have kind of fallen into the Netflix model where they just wait till everything's all done and they read it all at once. I admit that's what I do now. But if I really wanted to shake things up, and maybe I would experiment with this only on a small scale first with just a few titles, is I would not create a trade paperback, at least not right away. Maybe I would wait 5 years, 3 years, or something like that. And that might spark some re-interest in the character or the series I've done, but it kills the collector market. Why would you want to buy a book individually where it's going to cost you way more money to buy the individual issues and you have to wait a long time, you have to wait a month or at least 2 weeks between issues, when I can just wait a few years and then just go and browse the old the funny part is I would say browse the comic book shop, but I buy trade paperbacks from like Barnes & Noble. I don't go to comic book shops anymore when I buy trade paperbacks. So obviously, if you did it, the fallout would be a huge loss in revenue right away, but it could possibly drive the collector market as well as drive up the demand for single issue sales. So, folks, there you have it. That's what the Magnificent One would do if he ran a comic book company. So, number one, would you want to work for me? Probably not, but that's okay. And number two, what would you do if you ran a comic book company? Let me know. All right, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Bye. Hey, if you like this video, please feel free to like it and subscribe to my channel. Also, I'm on Instagram and Twitter, and I've got an awesome new comic book coming out on Indiegogo called Kinetic, which is about a girl who can harness the power of 1,000 dimensions to fight for good.